Good evening, good evening. Welcome to our the exploration series. Tonight's conversation should be a very real and honest one and will affect many of us in ways we probably didn't know was possible. Tonight's exploration is the exploration of generational curses. Ooh, and it doesn't necessarily have to be generational curses. It could be generational patterns, things that we've seen that's come over time and time again in our family, in our culture. Let's talk about it. Some of them, let's talk about which ones are toxic and need to be broken, and which one needs to come back from where it used to be. Tonight's panel, as of right now, is Ms. Melody Snow, Mr. Wendell Berry, and Ms. Jamila Flint, with another person looking to come in real soon. So, welcome, everyone! Yay!
All right, all right.
Let's go ahead and get to it, and let's go ahead and get this breakdown. So, this first question is is the very basic basis. In your definition, what do you what is a generational curse? We're going to start off with Jamila. We're going to go to Melody, and then Mr. Wendell is going to bring up the rear. Have at it.
Can you
Jamila.
hear me? Okay.
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Perfect. Um, Generational curses to me are patterns that have been, for all intents and purposes, negative patterns that have been passed down from generation to generation to generation, and it tends to be um, something that we don't address, that nobody has ever addressed to break that scenario. So that to me is what a generational curse is.
Melody.
I agree with all of that. I would like to add that I believe that it's actually a lesson that needs to be learned. And the curse is that whatever line it passes down isn't learning the lesson and then teaching it, passing it forward. So until the lesson is learned and the resolution is passed forward, it will continue. The universe, God, Allah, whatever you believe, will continue to show the family or the people in that community the same lesson over and over and over and over again.
Okay, Mr. Wendell.
Yeah, so a generational curse would be something, again, a generation typically is defined as 40 years. A curse is really simply the affect of or the result of a series of decisions which generally tends to be negative. Um, and so when you put those together, we've got something that recurs itself typically every 40 years or is prevalent or at least present in a generation that just is the result of the negative effect of decisions that have been made by the previous generations. And now just the result of that is showing up in the current generation. I was just looking at a quote from James Baldwin that says that not everything that is addressed can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's addressed. So to a previous point, I believe that Melody said, you know, when we don't take the time to analyze and then break down the different stimuli, the different things that go into the decisions that we make, and we sweep it under the rug or we kick the can down the road, then all we're doing is allowing it to compound. And when it compounds, that just means it comes back bigger, stronger, and tougher, which makes it that much harder for the next generation, which we can assume is not benefiting from any knowledge that could have been passed down from the previous generation to address the issue. Now they're that much further behind the eight ball, and something that could have been small and dealt with maybe with a conversation or with a loving confrontation now is a insurmountable, generational barrier that keeps us or keeps that next generation from maximizing its potential.
Okay. So in speaking everything that we are listening to right now, my question becomes, in your opinion, these generational curses had to start somewhere. In your mind, in our history, how far back do you believe some of these curses have actually came to pass? Whether it's because of environmental situations, because of um, just the way life has happened, or if it's just a family breakdown because of the evolution. What part of that, how far back do you think we can trace what some of these generational curses are, whether it's just in our family or whether it's in our culture as a whole? Um, Jamila?
I would go as far as to say that some of these stem multiple generations, even before slavery. Because what happens is we've always done it this way, and you don't even know why you've done it that way. So depending on your family history, your family knowledge, and things like that, to some extent, I would go so far to say as you could stem it all the way back to your ancestral roots, recognizing that in the African American culture we have multiple different ancestral backgrounds. You know, Caucasians do things a certain way, and Native Americans did things a certain way, and the Africans did things a certain way. And when you put all those things together and mix it in that melting pot, you're doing things and you don't even know why, because we've always done it that way. And that is a very dangerous scenario to say, well, why are we doing this? Well, we've always done it that way. Well, why? I don't know. So for me, I would say that it definitely digs way deeper than what any of us could actually know.
Melody?
I apologize. There's a very loud horn in the background. Can you hear me? Okay. I think it depends on who we're just saying that the curse is affecting. If we're talking about womanhood and the curses that we pass along as women, I would agree that that goes back to what we know of caveman, um, what's the word I'm looking for? What we can see from how, early man dictated where women fell in society and what their purpose was. If we're talking about in the Black community, I would agree with Jamila about a lot of things, but when I think about the curses in my family in particular, and I hear other of us in the Black community talking about the things that have been passed down and passed down and passed down, I can attribute, when I look at the history of our people, I can attribute a lot of it back to slavery. Because I feel like, I'm sure later we'll get into what those curses are, but I feel like a lot of them go back to the period when we were told to forget who we are. And we're forced to forget who we are. So to me, that's, it really depends on the curse in question, how far back I'm willing to go. If I'm looking at the LGBTQ community, I would say that the things that I'm seeing in today's society stem from, how things panned out after World War II and the 40s and the 50s. So that's my thought.
Mr. Wendell?
I look at it maybe less from a timeline perspective and maybe more from a life experience perspective, because curses, just it is a attempt to avoid a negative outcome, but that attempt to avoid a negative outcome generates a negative outcome. So when we look at fear, guilt, shame, when situations where a person's life, happiness, or their body is put in jeopardy, and in order to survive that encounter, that set of stimuli produces a particular result in order to avoid that negative or detrimental outcome. And then as a survival mechanism, that same MO gets repeated because it provided the result. I didn't die. I wasn't hurt. Or maybe for a woman, I wasn't abused. Or maybe for a child, I wasn't molested, or whatever. Or I was able to mitigate. Maybe that may be the better way to put it. I was able to mitigate the potentially worse affects of what was happening to me. A child may unfortunately clam up and allow a molester to touch them inappropriately, and they do that as a survival technique to make it stop, or to let it be over with. Or a woman who may have been assaulted or violated, didn't necessarily put up a fight, because they would have been overpowered and potentially beaten as well as violated, and so they acted in a certain way in order to facilitate the assault ending. There wasn't necessarily a positive outcome, but it was less negative than it could have been. And then that creates a habit pattern that then gets repeated, and subliminally, inadvertently, subconsciously, that shapes the rest of their life, unless an intervention happens that can correct or course correct that trajectory of impact that it would have on their life. Most people don't get that or take the steps necessary to interject that course correction into their life, and so they just continue with the habit pattern, and then that gets passed on, whether through explicitly being told to the next generation of, this is how you handle yourself in this particular situation to avoid negative affect, or whether it's, we just don't talk about that. And the inability, the fear, the guilt, the shame that would come along with addressing and confronting that issue is what allows the curse to not only remain, but also gain strength and gain foothold and become that much more detrimental, unless and until someone with the courage or with the tools steps forward to proactively disrupt that pattern. So again, it's not necessarily about a timeline. It's really about a lived experience and whether or not that experience can be counteracted as intentionally as the violation that caused it was inflicted on the person. So,
I mean, you bring up a very good point. To me, the root of a lot of generational everything is shame.
Mm.
Shame is a very powerful, useless emotion. and we it generates fear, and it goes forward, like that. And I think that's, to me, that's the root of the cause, is shame and fear.
Okay. So let's put some meat behind this. What, in your opinion, are the most noticed, or what would you define as a generational curse in this era that we're currently in? Have you seen that you would fall under the umbrella of generational curses? What examples have you seen? I'm going to switch up a little bit. Melody, start us on off.
Ooh, I was taking notes, thinking maybe somebody. I mean, first and foremost, single motherhood is the largest one that I see across, I mean, not just the Black community anymore, I see it across multiple generations and across multiple ethnicities as the largest generational curse that we have not figured out how to address. And then child abuse is it's the second one. It goes along with Jamila's statement about, it's always been that way. The way we handle our children is to beat them. And, I don't, if we haven't been, if that's how we were raised, we don't know another way. We can read all the science and all the books and all of that, but as a mother, if my child is driving me nuts, crazy, and I'm in that moment, my automatic is to do what my mom did. Smack across the mouth, stop talking back to me, do what I told you to do. Depending on the transgression, you get a beating, and we don't know any other way, because that's what happened to us. And that's a huge one. So single motherhood, which to me, creates another layer of child abuse. So I think those two are the largest that I see in terms of generational curses.
Jamila?
I would absolutely agree with Melody. On top of that, definitely abusive relationships in general. Um, I can use myself as an example. My father's father was abusive, and in turn, he had 4 boys. Those 4 boys were abusive. Now, typically, you say from father to son to grandson. Ironically, I was the abuser, which you don't hear a lot about. You don't hear about the woman being the abuser. Um, but I am proud to say that I broke the curse. Um, my brother has been married twice, and not once will you ever hear any woman that he's ever dated say that he put a hand on them. It'll never happen. But I can say ashamedly that yes, I was the abuser. So definitely abuse and dealing with that and knowing how, because what my father and his brother saw was, oh, this is how daddy handles his woman. And so then what I saw was, oh, if you're not, acting right, then this is how we handle that. And so then in turn, in my frustration, oh, this is how we handle this. Okay, I'm a brat. Let's do it. You know, so that's a huge thing. And like I said, I definitely agree with Melody in terms of the single motherhood um, and being able to break those curses. I'm huge on, if you have to pop a child's hand so they don't burn their hand, that's one thing.
But I am of the mindset that at a certain point, your child has words. So you have to learn to communicate with your child. Okay, why did you do this? Teaching them how to communicate their feelings in terms of why they're acting out or why they're doing the things they're doing. How come why aren't you doing your homework? Do you not understand your homework? Instead of constantly, beating the child because, if Johnny has one apple and Susie has two, how many apples do you have? And you get frustrated, and now you're spanking the child because you're frustrated. I am strongly of the mindset children have words. Now your job is to teach them to express those words. And again, those are some of the ways that we have to start recognizing so that we can break those curses. And I saw somebody said that it sounded like tradition. And keep in mind, all traditions are not good traditions. Just because we've always done it that way does not make it right. So it is definitely one, and that is the fundamental difference in, is it tradition or is it a curse? Some of those things just should have never been done or never started in the first place. So, definitely, those are the two things, the single motherhood and abusive relationships, I would definitely see as a curse.
Okay, Mr. Berry, let's hear yours.
All right. So an example that I would bring up is broken homes. Broken homes, and the reasons why they break, and do they have to be broken? Because change is inevitable, but all change doesn't have to be bad change. And even change that comes as a result of poor decisions, and the consequences of those poor decisions does not necessarily have to result in a destruction, or a breaking. It can be molded into something that is simply a new iteration of what was. I say that from the perspective of, just when two people, let's say, for example, get a divorce. Okay. It is far too easy to default into a mindset that divorcees can't get along, or that you can't get along with an ex, someone who used to hold a high position in your life, from an emotional perspective, simply because the relationship didn't work anymore. Because not all relationships are meant to be permanent. And the success or failure of a relationship should not only be measured in its tenure, but more so in its substance. And did it accomplish a mutually beneficial goal for both or all parties? And can all parties recognize that goal was actually accomplished, and and have the personal maturity, and emotional intelligence to allow a transition and a change to happen without negatively interpreting it or projecting negativity onto what the new dynamic has the potential to be. Not all people part on good terms, but just because people part doesn't mean that the terms have to become sour. And I think that in the Black community, where a certain level of emotional dysfunction has become a tradition, and unfortunately a curse, taking the time to do personal work on oneself, to know who you are, and to accept and appreciate the people that come into your life, as readily, as to allow those people to exit your life, with the same degree of acceptance as they came into your life, and not interpret that as a failure, or not to interpret that as something that will cause you damage moving forward, but to choose to see it in a more positive light, because everything serves. If that relationship served you, then you got what you needed from it. And it's okay to allow it to change into something else, because its purpose was fulfilled. Um, but it takes a degree of maturity to do that. And sometimes the fear of the change is the very thing that causes, people to respond and to react, rather than embracing the fact that a change is happening and interpreting that in a different way. So yeah, just broken homes, broken relationships. They don't have to. They don't have to be broken. They're still relationships. They're just relationships that have transitioned from one level to another. And that transition doesn't mean that they are less valuable. It just means that it's different. So that'd be an example I would give.
Okay. And Ken, welcome to the party. The question we're currently on is, what situations or patterns fall under the heading of generational curse? So far, we have single motherhood, child abuse, abusive relationships, broken homes, broken relationships. Anything you could think of that goes just what would today be needed to known as a generational curse per se?
If I had to say what I believe is a generational curse that just hasn't been discussed yet, it would be, and fellas, brace yourself for this. It would be beta maleism. I know growing up, I saw a lot of young men who had fathers in their life, but those fathers were not strong individuals. They didn't lead with the intent of growing their young men into the leaders that are needed in today's society. And what happens when you don't know something? You're ignorant. And as you grow up, we're talking from childhood to adulthood. What I love to use this phrase in 100 Black Men, our motto is, what they see is what they will be. And I feel like too often there are multiple generations of men who do not lead from this front, do not set the example, and solely the lack of leadership provided by the male in the house can lead young men to believe that if there's a lack of leadership, a lack of assertiveness, daddy is walked all over and he doesn't accept his role in the household as a leader, or even out of his community, not respected, not seen highly, does not have the ability to influence those around them, then they put the child in a position to believe that it is okay to be mediocre. Now, this does not mean all, but again, we're talking about something that could be considered as an attribute that can be passed down to the next generation. So I believe that one of the key situations, one of the key generational curses that unfortunately gets passed down are fathers who carry themselves as beta males, and unfortunately long term end up producing beta boys who eventually become the next generation. And until they run into someone that can educate them, or a situation occurs that makes them change their personality and mentality, that is something that will continue to follow. And I double down on that. If you are a male in a household and you are not leading with conviction, if you're not out in your community leading by conviction, if you're not in the workplace and you know the answer, you know the moves that need to be made, and you are the guy that is silent, don't argue with me, argue with your mama. You are a beta male, and it's time for you to step your game up and get yourself together. That's all I got.
Okay. So,
Michelle, there was a question that was asked that was really intriguing to me. And Mel, I think you saw what I was asking. So the question was the single motherhood curse due to a woman's strength and independence or lack of honesty allowed in their relationships? When you talk about single motherhood isn't anything new to us. It is something that stemmed from slavery. Let's start there. When you have a family unit that master allowed to happen, and then somebody does something, whether it's the wife or the husband, when master says, you know what, somebody messed up and I'm gonna sell you off, and now you have the mother here to raise their child by themselves. It is so the independence and strength was just something that had to be done. So yes, absolutely. It is part of that having to be independent, having to be strong, because yeah, they'll keep the baby there until the baby is old enough to work for themselves, and then, oh wait a minute, I have this young strong man that I can sell off for a whole lot of money. So yes, they keep those children there with their mothers until we see a different profit perspective. But in terms of being a single mother, yes, we've always had to be strong, we've always had to be independent. And this is where the narrative, even as Ken was saying, having to deal with that beta male type syndrome, um black men were broken. Black men were broken to the point that they feel less than. And so now you have all these things that we were talking about. You have the broken homes, you have the single motherhood, you have some men who don't know how to lead their home. And I say some because there are absolutely black men out there who know how to lead their home. Um, but when you start talking uh, about all of these things put together, it's a whole scenario, and I don't know that I would call it um, a curse as a whole, but definitely some things that need to be recognized and dealt with and talked about, like we're doing today, accordingly. So I would definitely say, yes, it is one of those things where we have had to be independent and strong for generations, and unfortunately it's a place right now where um we have to learn the balance. There's a balance in being too strong, too independent. I was actually in a group, and I asked this question: is there a such thing as a woman being too strong and too independent to the point that they um, kind of talk themselves out of a relationship? And I don't care if it's a heterosexual relationship or an LGBTQ relationship. At some point, yeah, you can be too strong and talk yourself out of a beautiful situation, and we have to learn to address that as well. So that was just my thought on that particular question.
So I'm gonna chime in for a moment on that particular statement. Because you told a portion of the story, but let me address the second part. Due to lack of honesty allowed in the relationships, don't know if it's necessarily lack of honesty. Some of them, to all of your points, is what we've seen. So we don't know how to let the man be a man in a relationship like that. Mama was a single mama. The grandmother was a single parent. And all that they taught her and ingrained into this generation, you don't need no man, you don't need this, you don't need that. And so he could be just fine. It may not be nothing to do with him. But she's been ingrained that, okay, she got her kid, I can take this, I can do this by myself, and don't allow him to be a part of the life. So you have to know that there is a double-edged sword when it comes to that. There is a very much a double-edged sword when it comes to it, because you have a lot of women, to your point, Jamila, that are too strong or too independent, but sometimes it's they're too strong in their mind, not in their actions. So they believe they this Billy Bad self, but realistically, they're hurting their children by not letting their children have the benefit of having another parent, and by not letting themselves have that moment of time that makes them be a better parent. Because my ex-spouse and I may not always see eye to eye on everything, but when he called, they going. Guess what? That gives mommy a moment to breathe, to sit down and figure out who she is as a person versus as a mother only. But although I'm strong enough and I'm walking into this process, they need that other side. They need to experience both sides. They don't need mama saying he ain't this, he ain't that. Whatever their relationship is with their child needs to be learned by their interaction amongst each other. Because he may have been a horrible man to you, but maybe the greatest father in the world, and you just don't know. So it is a part of it is because, like you say, back from slavery on, we've had to be the ones to take care of it. For some people, that's their journey, that's their story, and I absolutely, understand. But for some of them, it's because they've been taught that they ain't supposed to have nothing different. This is how it's supposed to be. And that's when it becomes a generational curse, when they're presented with better options and they just refuse to take it.
Can I just,
Yeah.
I want to rephrase the question. So when I look at this question, is the curse due to strength and independence or lack of honesty? So I want to switch the narrative of that, right? Because what I find is, as women, we are forcing ourselves, and we're doing it to ourselves, we hold the power. We are forcing ourselves into this black and white area of either I am a strong woman and I can do it and I don't need help, or I am a weak woman, I need all the help, I depend solely on, and I am nothing without, right? And we do it to ourselves, talking to ourselves, but as women, we do it to each other. What I want us to rephrase the narrative as, I am strong, I can do it, we are strong, we can do it. I'm not greater than or less than the partner that I am choosing to raise children with. We don't have to live in the same house. We don't necessarily, like you were saying, Michelle, like what works for you and your children. I've seen parents who split, and instead of selling the house and breaking the kids up, they keep the house and they house share. One parent lives there one week, one parent lives there the next week. Or they both, have separate apartments, or they swap apartments or whatever. But the point is that they both recognize that together they make great parents. They can make good parents for those kids. And it's not about one person being weak or strong or independent or codependent. It's about what's best for the children and maintaining a healthy environment and growth and all of that for the children involved. And to me, when I say single motherhood as a curse, I don't mean it as a strong versus weak, because that implies that by saying it's a curse, it means that, we're missing something. And I think Mr. Wendell and Mr. Ken kind of touched on this, in terms of beta men and alpha men, and it's not about, change isn't bad and all of that. We have to stop looking at ourselves as less than because we're doing what's best for our children. We're doing what's best for our health. We're doing what's best for the other parents' well-being. You know, I try not to use qualifiers on things. I try not to say that, you know, I'm too sad or I'm too happy, or, you know, because those are non-existent words. You know, shame and fear are useless words that mean nothing, right? And so if we continue to look at the narrative of single motherhood as a weakness, that's when it continues to be a curse, because it's not necessarily a weakness. We don't say that about single fatherhood. We don't say that these men out here who are raising their own, their children, and for whatever reason, the kids don't live with the mother, they live with the father full time, or, the mother's, whatever. We blame the mom still in those situations. We don't say that this family of men, maybe it has happened over the course, and that's how this particular man was like, no, my dad raised us. She doesn't, she's not doing what she needs to do to be, what I consider a mother, an effective mother to my child. I'm going to raise my child. We don't call that a generational curse. And part of that, like I said, is women, we do it to ourselves. We make each other feel like we're less than because we are doing it by ourselves, or we need a partner, whatever side you're on. So I think, that for, to Christina's point, I want to flip the narrative, and I want to flip why we consider it a curse and address that.
If I could chime in on that for a little bit. First, I acknowledge the validity in everything that you stated, and I agree. I think that the reason why, a reason why is considered a curse or is viewed as a curse or a negative thing is because rather than simply accepting the reality of a situation, we ascribe a meaning to a causality and a meaning to it. And then that causality then becomes just inextricably linked to the affect, that because you are a single mother, you're cursed, or because you are a single mother, now you have to be strong, or because you are so strong, you can't cooperate with a man, and now he doesn't want to be with you, and now you're going to be a mother by yourself. When that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. We all are interdependent. So I really personally kind of abhor and detest the demonization of one gender against the other simply because a dynamic is not what we would consider to be ideal. The whole independent thing, there's a weaponization behind that. Strong, independent woman. Those are used as terms of weaponization, not necessarily terms of endearment or praise of a person's character, but they're weaponized. Black. Yeah, well, black, yep, strong black woman, strong, independent black woman, and you don't hear that coming from men, because men, traditionally don't have to weaponize their strength in that context from the perspective of, I don't need you. I can be completely independent and separate from you and be okay. That's not a position and a posture that men take traditionally, even though sometimes it does happen. But in this case, we hear that term being weaponized many times from women against men, and then reciprocally, men will use it against women, as opposed to acknowledging the fact that we are interdependent, that we have each other's pieces. And every puzzle piece, if you notice, typically puzzle pieces fit many other puzzle pieces. So just because you may not fit on the left side of the puzzle doesn't mean that there's not a perfect fit for you on the right side of that piece. Because we all have to, when we accept the fact that we're interconnected, then there's a piece in our lives that someone else is designed to fit. And so you don't reject the puzzle simply because this particular piece doesn't fit you on this particular side. It may have fit perfectly on your other side. So, I really hope that it is my hope that, and it is my goal, my expectation, and my intention to, in the course of changing this narrative, that it gets reoriented to the fact that, yeah, we need each other. I can be good without you, but I can be great with you. And I don't have, and my being great with you doesn't diminish the fact that I'm good without you. It just means that I choose to be greater. And you don't have to settle for just being good when great is an option. So that is what I wanted to add to that.
Okay. Great. So my next question in this series, when did it start being okay to remain in these situations versus, as well as we're supporting people in these jacked up situations instead of saying, come on, let me help you get out. So you see someone in an abusive relationship and it's like, that's their business, and you walk off. And we're not talking about the ones who you try to talk to and they're staying in this relationship knowing this. I'm talking about you see someone, that they're in a jacked up situation, that they may not see it. When do we find it was okay for these generational curses? We saw mama go through it. We see auntie go through it. Now I'm looking at my sister going through the same thing my mama went through. When do we find that it was okay to let that happen? When is it that we are so at odds in our family that we stop remembering to reach out and say, hey, that ain't healthy. How can I help you? Some people stay in certain situations because they feel alone and they feel like there's nothing for them to do. And this person has made them feel as if no one's going to help them. And when they reach out, no one helped them. So they stay because it's all they got. When did this become normal? When did this become okay? Go ahead, Jamila.
Okay. I grew up in an abusive scenario. And after my mother came out of that scenario, I had to have that conversation with her because it was necessary for my healing. Even though my father wasn't abusive towards me, it was still an abusive environment which affects the children. And people don't think about that. Even if your father isn't beating on you, they see, that you're beating on mom. It emotionally affects, mentally and emotionally affects the child. So my question to my mother was, why did you stay? Because my grandmother, my mother's mother, asked me, well, how come you never said anything? We were children. We didn't know. You don't know any better as a young child. It is what is normal in your life, right? So fast forwarding and asking my mother was, understand, she had left several times. She left several times. And always it was I love you, I'm not going to do it anymore. I want us to be a family, those narratives, right? Okay. I got to a point where I said, I am not going to allow you all to love each other to death. That was me. I was tired as the child, and I was an adult child at that point. And there were people that I began to speak to who were like, we just thought that nobody cared about her. The abused has to be ready to go, period. Because if they're not ready to go, they're going to come back time and time again until they have had enough or they're dead. one of the two is going to happen, unfortunately. So it was one of those things where I had to literally pray and talk to my mother to give her the strength that at that moment she didn't have, the strength to walk out of that situation and be okay with it, because there was a vow that was taken that she would never leave him. But at said point that it is your life or death, you have to break a vow. You have to break that curse, because that is the curse. Um, Now, so my mother has since been out of that relationship. What I found in that is I noticed as an adult, I began to notice when I saw abusive relationships. I knew what it looked like. In knowing and understanding what that looked like, I have helped several young ladies come out of those relationships because I can relate to them, because I'm willing to talk to them. We spoke last week about talking to different generations about different things. I am one of those older women who I don't have a problem saying, look, I know what you're going through. I see it. You can't hide it. I know what it looks like. When you're ready to go, let me know. Because if they're not ready, again, if a person isn't ready to come out of that relationship because they're so in love and believe that, oh my God, he loves me and this is just how he shows love, they're not going anywhere. They're just not going to leave. Um, and I am grateful and humbled to be able to say that yes, I have helped a few ladies come out of those narratives, and as Wendell was saying, not we're not going to weaponize being an independent, strong Black woman, in a negative way, but understand your strength as a individual. You are strong enough to be able to raise your child by yourself if you need to. That's not to say that you're not going to have a partner that comes in and loves you and your children, exceedingly abundantly above any you could ever ask or think. So making sure, number one, that they're ready to go, making sure that they get the help they need, because when you are in an abusive relationship, when you are in those types of scenarios, there is healing that needs to be done. It doesn't make sense to go from one abusive relationship to the next abusive relationship. That's absolutely insane to me. So making sure, get the help that you need, sit down and talk to somebody. Why is it that you are comfortable with somebody hitting on you or mentally abusing you and telling you that you're not good enough and that you ain't ish, and that you all kinds of different out of the box names? Get that healing so that you can be a strong individual. Um, and so for me, all of that being said, I recognize as a generation, if you see that generationally, we see auntie going through that, or we see a cousin going through that, and everybody has always said, what happens in our house stays in our house. That's so toxic. It is incredibly toxic to say that. Sometimes, and I look at it now when my grandmother said, well, how come you didn't say that? Yes, we were children, but at a certain point, when I was a teenager, when I was saying it, nobody believed me because I was a teenager. Well, teenagers act out. Wait a minute. If somebody is saying something repeatedly, maybe you should investigate that scenario. Maybe you should investigate that situation. So number one, what happens in the house shouldn't always stay in the house. And number two, when you do hear people speak out, listen. That's how we begin to break that scenario. That's how we begin to break that curse. Because if you're not listening to the scenario, if you're not listening to the child who is crying out or acting out, and watch how the child is acting out, because the child will tell the story. The child will always tell a story if there is abuse in the situation. It's just one of those things that happens. So there are a whole lot of scenarios that go with that. But at the end of the day, I would say definitely, like I said, what stays in the house can't always stay in the house.
No, Melody, go ahead.
I'm about to make a lot of people unhappy. Your question was, when did it become okay for the generational curse to continue? The moment that man created God is when it became okay. Because in my, what I see a lot in all of these curses, people go back to the Bible, people go back to the Quran, people go back to the, if you're Hindu, to the Artha Vedas, people go back to religion consistently to justify war, masochism, sexism, hate, abuse, slavery, all of it. And what religion does is it offers, now again, I said I'm gonna make some people mad, so just bear with me. It offers a soothing answer. Well, this is my curse because I'm a product of Eve and I have to take this burden because we made Adam eat the piece of fruit. So that's our curse. And all the women that come from us are cursed. That's bullshiggity, okay? It's okay for us to have been enslaved because the Bible talks about slaves. And this, that scripture about obey your master. And I'm speaking from Christianity because that's how I was raised, right? But all religions have it. And the moment, and again, I'm also speaking from a perspective of the Black community because that's all I know. So the moment that we, we were indoctrinated into this religion and the master said, all of this doesn't matter. When you get to heaven, you'll have your cake and eat it too. So just take what you need to take here and it'll be okay on the other side. That's when it became okay. That's when we started going to our ministers and our pastors, and the answer, instead of get mental help, instead of let me refer you to a women's shelter, instead of get your child out of that house if they're being abused, instead of, this person's an alcoholic, they're not healthy for you, they're not healthy for your household, get out, pray on it. We're going to start a prayer chain. We're going to make sure that the Lord protects you and covers you. And I'm not saying there's no value in that. But what we're doing is we're not offering religion and a behavioral modification.
Preach, Mel.
Okay. So again, have your faith. Faith has moved mountains. I believe it. I've seen it. My life is a testament. Okay. But the moment that I think I'm going to kill myself, the answer is not to say to me, pray on it. Because when someone said that to me, I said, there is a God, but he does not give a shit about me. So your pray on it does not help me. And I think that that's what, look at the Catholic Church. That's what wipes all the abuse and curse away. Just pray on it, girl. It's okay. When you get to heaven, it won't matter. If your child, I've heard this at funerals for babies. Oh, well, the Lord needed your child. Mm. Oh, well, you never know what that your child's purpose was, or what your daughter, your son's purpose was, for that man or that woman to have abused and beaten, and killed or hurt your child or hurt your friend or your sister, your mother, your brother. That's not a solution, but we've been taught that it is. We've been soothed and pacified by this all-being man who's going to make it okay in the end. That's when it became okay. Right there.
Mr. Wendell, come on, let us hear you.
Oh, just there was so much in that, and thank you, Melody, because that was full of a lot of good points. Especially religion as a crutch, as a placebo, as an excuse not to take tangible action, moving you from a place of faith and believing into something that's tangible that can affect your immediate situation, which is actually one of my main problems with organized religion as a concept, that it is so easy to justify and use spiritual rationalization to gloss over the fact that there is real pain and misery that could be eliminated, could be addressed if the very faith that is being preached got off of its knees and got on its feet. So, so thank you for that. When the question was asked, I thought about a story that I heard before. It's the story of the dog laying on a nail, and we're talking about about changing. Okay, a man was walking down the street, heard a dog howling, just in pain and misery. He walked up on a house and saw the dog laying there. Old man was sitting in the rocking chair. He asked the old man, "What's wrong with the dog? Why is it making all this noise?" And the man said, "Oh, it's easy, because he's laying on a nail." And the man asked him, "Well, why doesn't he get up and move if it's hurting him so bad?" And the old man simply said, "It doesn't hurt enough." And so there is a pain that the dog was willing to endure because the responsibility and the pain of changing its circumstance was more distasteful than the physical pain that it was experiencing. And if I could add a caveat to that and maybe alter the story a little bit, I would say that if that old man would have actually reached over to physically move the dog off of the nail, the dog would have bit him. So this goes back to Jamila's point about when a person has to be ready to change. Otherwise, they'll go back to their same situation. And unfortunately, many people, and unfortunately many women primarily, but people in general, it happens to all of us. This is a human thing and not a gendered thing. But the pain of change can sometimes be more difficult to accept. The possibility of change is more difficult to accept than enduring of the physical pain that a person may be experiencing. And that personal change really goes with dealing with the feelings of shame, guilt, fear, inadequacy. What am I going to do? Am I strong enough to do it? What if I fail? All of these negative internalized self-talk that people will use on themselves, as opposed to you know what, I'm just going to accept my lot. One day things will get better. It won't be like this all the time. And again, the can gets kicked down the road and further down the road until either, the small thing, that could have been addressed very easily up front now becomes infected and becomes festered and becomes putrid and becomes toxic and ultimately grows to a point where it kills you. So, that external change, the pain of that external change becomes more easy to deal with mentally than the effort and the work that it would take to proactively get off of the nail and change your own situation. So I just think that if we can get not only other people, but when even in our own personal lives, conquering the enemy within is always harder than conquering the enemy without. but that enemy within is the very enemy that has the most power. The circumstances out there, that's just external stimuli. You have the ability to respond and react to that, but it's the demon that resides in between your own two ears that you have to exercise in order to really empower yourself to make a change that's going to benefit you. So that's what I would say.
All right, Ken, come on, give it to me.
All right. So my honest perspective on this, I want to start off with what's carrying on a point that Wendell made, and I want to make this extremely clear. Cans will always continue to be kicked down the road until someone picks it up. I'm gonna say it again. Cans will always continue to be kicked down the road until somebody picks it up. So what I really want to delve into, number one, is that I think it's unfortunate that for a lot of people, it takes someone else coming in to save them before they realize that they're in trouble. If you think a little bit deeper on that point, I'm not just saying that you identify the problem. What I'm saying is that it's unfortunate that a person has a problem that is chronic and that is systemic long term. And it takes someone externally identifying that you have a problem before you get rescued. And it's just unfortunate. What I will say, it's never been okay for generational curses to exist. It's never been okay. I think too many people get comfortable in a multitude of things. We've already discussed that religion is a thing. I think a lot of people get complacent because it's okay for me to get beat on as long as he continues to pay the bills on the 1st and the 15th. And it starts to hit home very hard and very fast that some people are willing to suffer as long as their lifestyle remains sufficient. And it's a challenge that people are going to continue to go through until they elect to assist themselves. You can't help anybody else until you help yourself, which brings me to my next point. The reason why I think a lot of people don't get involved in addressing other people's generational curses is because they got curses of their own that they're not even willing to address for themselves. So when it hits them that someone else is going through a problem, mess around and let that problem be identical. How can you help somebody when you don't even know the solution to your own issue? So it becomes very problematic very fast. So a person on the outside looking in invokes a challenge of trying to figure out how to save someone. And let's say they do save them. The unfortunate thing is a lot of those individuals can literally go save somebody that's in the exact same predicament, but does not have the intestinal fortitude, does not have the mental willpower to be able to get themselves out of their predicament. And that makes it significantly challenging to want to go in and save somebody else. It's those internal demons that people consistently fight with that make it very, very challenging for people to overcome their fear of self, fear of situation in order to help someone exit out of the situations that they're going through. So I'll leave you with this point. At the end of the day, no matter how you feel about it, if you are an individual that has identified that there is a generational curse and you are experiencing that curse directly, you have a choice. Let no one tell you different. If you can hold on to the Bible on the left side, hold on to your Bible on the right side. At the end of the day, you are all given free will. It is a choice. And if you decide to do nothing, inaction is still action, meaning that even your declination of making a choice is you still making a choice. And that also goes for the person on the outside that identifies that there's something going on, but still elects to do nothing about it. So I make my point of saying that if you're going to change a predicament for someone else, just understand that it doesn't eliminate the issue that's still going on with you. If you identify it, put yourself in a position to be able to address it. And if you can't address it solo, seek wise counsel, seek therapy, seek out people that have gone through what you've been through. We have gone through 4 industrial revolutions in the United States. We started out with textile, then we moved to machination, then we moved to automations with computer and technology, and now we're in Industrial Revolution 4.0, IoT, the industry of things, meaning the cloud and all of the other software platforms that you utilize at this time. And with all the platforms we have available, the best part of that is that a simple Google search can connect you with somebody who may potentially, and the big word there is potentially, because not everybody's perfect, not everybody has flawless answers, but you can potentially be connected with someone that has the answer that you need to break it. So why do people walk by? There's multiple reasons. But at the end of the day, there is a choice that is involved with either deciding to help someone else or deciding to even help yourself. But no, you can't help someone that doesn't want to be helped. And the person that may not want to be helped may also be you. That's all I have.
Okay, so my next question in this journey, we're talking about generational curses and patterns. So what happened to the village? What happened to the village? We used to have a village that taught us how to get around some of this stuff. Well, what happened to the village? Well, what happened to it? When did it be okay to stop listening to the village? We used to be able to help each other. But
But you
what
can't tell me how to raise my child.
No,
Mine is a-
listen. I'm so sorry. There never was a useful village. So I think it was you, Mr. Kin. I think it was last week you were speaking about the elders who weren't sharing with our generation, until after we go through it. The village has never been the village. Listen, I grew up with multiple aunties and aunts and all of that. And the one thing that I resonated with from last week was what I heard was from 90% of those people was after I had already experienced the situation. So after I've already been in an abusive relationship, after I've already failed at some endeavor, after I'm already in financial straits, that's when the village comes together to lift me up. And I hear, oh, well, this is, how I did it, and this and you should have done it this way. Where were you when I was 16 on my first date? Where were you when I was 21 trying to figure out what career I was going to go into? Where were you when I was 32 buying my first house? Like, there never has been a village. The village is another one of those soothing covers that make us feel like we have what's the word I'm looking for? Like a reason to be okay with our curse. Because in my village, all the women are single. In my village, all the children were beat. So the village is a myth. And I think, it goes both ways. As someone who is now an elder, I recognize that I'm not going to allow those who come after me to have to wait, right? I'm going to share what I'm very open with any child, anybody, even people who are my age or older, who are in situations like you were saying, Mr. Kin, that I can say, look, let me share with you, okay? You don't have to keep doing this. We had this generational curse, and it took a lot of work and pain and crying and conversation and therapy, and we had to, man, we swept a lot of dust bunnies out from under that bed, but my family is stronger than it ever was, so it doesn't, the village is not the thing. It's just what Mr. Kin said. It is exactly what he said last week and this week. It is about making sure that we, and what Jamila said earlier, someone has to identify, and Mr. Wendell, you said it too, it takes one person. I am the person who broke one of the generational cycles of abuse in my family, because I saw another family that did something we don't do. And I was like, why don't we do that? It takes one person to start the path, and it takes everybody else to be open, but it doesn't take a village. The village is a myth. It's a covering of the problems, because if you have a village, chances are you're surrounding yourself with people who have the same issues that you do. It's just human nature. So I would say the answer to that question is the village is not the solution.
Okay, so Romeo, welcome to the show. A little late. Welcome to the show. Come on in and you know, unmute your phone. Come on in and tell me what you're thinking.
Hey, you guys. Personally, when it comes to generational curses, yes, we have to have somebody that's going to step up, but we cannot ostracize that one person that is willing to step up and break those curses. One thing about our community, and I hate it about our community, is once we start doing good, it is how can I word it? It is looked upon badly when you put yourself in a better position, when you work on your mental health, work on your stability as yourself. It is looked down upon. So yes, we need that one person to step up and break the curses, but we also have to step back as a group, not just as an individual, as a group, as a culture, as a people, and understand what we're doing to each other. Yes, you can do everything you do on that side, but as a people, we still need validation. So if we want to attack the whole situation, we have to come for the individual, and we have to go for the group. So when it comes to family curses, we have to attack it with everybody, not just a single person, but everybody has to be willing to be put in that vulnerable position. And that's my piece. Bye, y'all. I'm about to start cooking.
Right. So that's what I was saying. Like, you know, once the person identifies it, and to your point, Jamila, and everybody else's point, the other people have to be willing to go with you. The statistics in our country say that an abused woman has to leave her partner 7 times before it sticks. 7 times. So not only does she have to experience the 7 times, but we have to be willing to have the conversation with her 7 times. We have to be willing to keep bringing it up and say, hey, you know, you're in an abusive relationship, right? I love you. I just want you to know that I see it and I'm here when you're ready. But you know you're in an abusive relationship, right? And every time she leaves, we have to be, like you said, we have to be okay with supporting her. Everybody has to be willing. You know, my family wouldn't be where it was if my mom hadn't been willing to cry, explain her situation, apologize, whatever she had, you know, go to therapy. We all had to go to therapy. My sister had to finally open up and talk to us about what she experienced. It takes everybody, but it doesn't, it takes one person though to identify it, and then everybody to solve it.
Absolutely.
Oh, a minute, Mr. Berry, you got something to say?
I do. Getting to the question of what happened to the village. I think it's incumbent upon us to understand that the village is not it's being used in an amorphous, you know, type of way. Like there's this thing in the ether called the village that we call upon when we need to have a crutch for why our situations aren't better. But when you look at what is a village, it's a place where there's a group of people that live within within a proximity to each other, such that what goes on in one's house, if it doesn't affect another person's house, it's at least recognized by the people in the next house. So you can't have a village where a man is beating his wife and the other men in the village don't know about it and are not willing to intercede. There has to be a vision, or at least an understanding, as well as a buy-in and a connection between the villagers in order for the village to exist. If we don't have that, then all we've got is a bunch of people who live around each other. And I think that is what has happened with us, especially in our community, in the Black community. We know we have sacrificed the interconnectivity and the value and the impact on the development of the collective, and we've sacrificed that on the altar of individuality. And then we wonder, why we don't have a phoenix rising from the ashes of that sacrifice, you know? And so if we truly want to be able to break generational curses and things like that, then we have to, I believe that we have to embrace the whole notion that I am not here just for me, and you are not here just for you. There is a we, there is a collective we, there is an usness that we have abandoned. And then when we get into individual problems and situations that are detrimental, then we decry the fact that there wasn't an us to help me. And we have the ability through intentionality, through focus, and it does, without getting into whole patriarchy versus matriarchy, but having some type of collective principle-based understanding, organizing principle, that in this group of people, even if we don't live in the same neighborhood, we could live in different states, but in this collection of people, these are the things that we will and will not allow to happen to each other. I'm not going to allow your child to go and do any old kind of thing without if I know better, then your child is my child. And I need to have your permission to speak with your child the way that I speak with my child, because now you know the love that I have for my children, I have that same love for yours. Because it's not just about my children. My household is not just about the people that live under my roof. You are my house. You are my people. You are mine and I am yours. And that is one of the things that makes a village, is what makes a tribe a tribe. We don't have that. We have abandoned that because everyone is trying to go for themselves. So if we can get back to a place of seeing you, when I see you, I see myself. And the love that I have for myself, I'm going to show it to you because you are an extension of me. That is the heart of a village. And you're right, Melody. We don't have that. And we've let that go, and we can get it back. All it takes is a decision, some focus, some intentionality, and some follow through. And I wrote down something else, and I promise this will be the last thing I'll say for right now. about knowledge and wisdom. Ken, going back to your points on last week, that Melody you spoke on, why is it that the elders didn't pass on their knowledge and their wisdom properly, and why is it that young people don't readily seek after that wisdom or in things of that nature? But because knowledge is the proper interpretation of information, and we don't and just because someone is aged doesn't mean that they have a proper interpretation of information. They just have experience, and that experience doesn't mean that they are an authority. It just means that they've gone through something. Whether they've gone through it successfully or unsuccessfully, they just have the experience of going through it. The knowledge can come, a child can come and take a look at someone's situation and experiences and gain knowledge from it by properly interpreting what that information was and seeing how they're going to apply it to their life. And that's where wisdom comes in, because wisdom is the proper application of knowledge. So again, we can gain wisdom through observation and proper interpretation, because people can only teach us one of two things. They can only teach you what to do and what not to do. And you ultimately have the choice of what direction you're going to go in once you have the presence of mind to observe and see. Are you going to operate in knowledge, or are you going to operate in wisdom? Because if you don't operate in either one of those two things, then all you're dealing with is data. Okay, so those are my points. Thank you very much. As the distinguished young gentleman would say, I yield my time.
Come on, Ken. Come on, you've been itching. Come on.
What you got, Ken?
I like how he smoothly came through with the. I appreciate it being young. I appreciate that a lot. I'm starting to see it in my face. So now I got to take my butt to the gym tonight. All right. Hey, look. Y'all notice. Y'all already know I have very, very big energy anytime we talk about the contribution of elders to the youth generations past them. And I'm going to keep beating my drum on it because I think it matters. I do not think that many of our elders did the best job of passing down wisdom. So I ain't gonna hold back. Look, here's the deal. So number one, I think the village still exists, but let me say something that I think is very important. Number one, there are different types of villages, and I think that's the first thing everyone needs to know. Number one, and two, you need to accept there are different kinds of villages. Let me explain more thoroughly. If I were to live in Los Angeles, California, that Los Angeles, California village is completely different if I lived in a village in Des Moines, Iowa. Those are two totally different villages, number one. The next thing I'm going to tell you is that in different villages, there are different specializations, okay? So there's people in different villages. You can go to one village, they're good at basket weaving. Go to another one, they're great at hunting. One that's good at finance, one that's good at education. Every village has something that they do. It's how they're able to work together. They're able to thrive together. Everyone has their small pieces that they contribute to the table, okay? Bear with me. The challenge is that in most modern day villages, no one has an identity anymore. A lot of people are in villages. We have people around us who are relatives. They're good at this, they're good at that, but the village itself does not have an identity. So I'd ask you, if you pulled your family together for a family reunion and you said, what's the one thing that we all can do together? The most that people can come up with is that together, unified, we can do the cha-cha slide really well, and we can make some really, really good ribs. And I say that jokingly, but I also say that in the most dead ass fashion possible. The truth is that there is no identity within the villages anymore. And the lack of identity allows people the permission to create individual identities of self. And those individual identities make people uncomfortable, because when you come with a situation that does not match their identity individually, they don't feel like they can have that dialogue with you, because what you're experiencing is different from anything they've ever experienced in their life. When you come to the table with a challenge that they have never faced before, all of a sudden it's a problem. It's an issue. And the problem is that a lot of families, because of the lack of unity and the lack of identity, everyone can get their own perceptions. Who in the family was pulling everybody together to say that when someone comes in and they have a major life challenge, who's there to unify everybody to say, who's there to say we need to help? A lot don't. You get the, hey, good luck with that. You got it. Or it's like we said earlier, pray on it. Which, by the way, if we really gonna talk about praying on stuff, let's not forget there's also another verse in the Bible that said faith without works is dead. And a lot of people forget. Like I always try to tell people, for every verse in the Bible, there's a verse in the Bible. So keep that in mind. The next thing I'm going to tell you is that you have some people within the village. Remember, I go back to these different specialties. There are people in your village, and guess what they specialize in? Here's a fun fact. There are people in the village, i.e. in your family, the only thing they really specialize in is being post-traumatic advisors, meaning that what they're good at is not prepping you for what's to come, but once the damage has been done, now they're prepared to give you feedback. Here's what you did wrong. Here's what happened here. And they're there to be your life coach when things go bad. You're going to be all right. Everything's going to be okay. No, I needed you when I was going through my situation. Where were you? And I think that's the problem that we deal with in a lot of these villages. The truth is, in modern day villages, we don't save anymore. In old villages, it used to be where if you had a problem, I'm pulling up. If someone wants to throw hands, guess what? I got 20 hands behind me and all of them are nice with it. That's how it used to be. Now, guess what? We've gone from being a village that saves each other to now being a village that the only thing that we can do is advise. And the inability to be able to reach out and to touch your cousin, touch your aunt, and help them get through situations has put us in a predicament where if the left and right don't know how to unify, how the hell are they gonna teach down? Because clearly up didn't do their job. I'm gonna say it again for the folks in the back if you didn't hear what I just said. If the left and the right are not unified, they can't teach unity, they can't advise, they can't support. How are they going to teach the down, i.e. the next generation? Because clearly the up did not do their job in making sure that everyone was on the same page and understood what the expectations were to unify a family. You see, what I've started to realize is that a lot of families are unified solely in title. If there's grandma at the head of the table, got it. Gram, that's the matriarch of the family. 9 times out of 10, there's somebody else in the family that's really doing all the work behind the scenes. And the reason that person is doing the work behind the scenes is because along the way, things have changed. Society changed. The way that people communicate, the way we love, the way we support, the way we trust each other, the way we challenge each other, the way that we address situations, all of this stuff has changed over time. And the problem is that there was no one there to keep one thing constant, and that was unity. And now that is pretty much unity, here's the thing, and I'm gonna say this last part, and I promise I'm gonna be done with it. Isn't it unfortunate that we got to a point that people have a stronger village in their workplace than they do within their house or even within their family? I can tell you right now, active duty Army soldier, Army captain, 14 years in the game now. I can tell you that I've dealt with soldiers that the 6 people that they wake up in the morning and do push-ups with, they know more dark secrets, they know more trauma they're going through than the family members that brought them into this world. And it's because within their family, a lot of unity has been converted into individuality. And until individuality is merged back into unity, you're going to continue to face the exact same problems. My recommendation, do what needs to be done. If there is no real leader in your family, and I recently had to do this myself. I literally put everybody on a Zoom call and I told them straight, we are not unified. We're not on the same page. Everyone is not on the same page about what we are, who we are. And here's another fun fact for you. A lot of us don't even know the history of our families. So you know how often we talk about, if you want to cure a disease, you need to find what caused it. You need to find out how to trace it back to where the problem is so that you can get the proper diagnosis, so that you can treat it properly. Well, guess what? A lot of you on this line as well. How many of you honestly can say that you know exactly where your roots trace back to? Real talk. What if your curse is all, what if you go to Africa where your curse started at and it's still popping? You don't know. And if you don't know, it's okay. But now is the time to bring everybody together to frame the challenges. And I mean, have an open conversation. I'm not telling you to put people in a position to be judged. But then again, that should be something that's addressed too. Because I got mad aunties that will sit in the room and, oh, you heard Uncle Al's daughter got pregnant. Like she didn't have a baby when she was young too. But anyway, I'm going to digress. The point I'm making here is that at the end of the day, what is most important is that you bring your family together. And sometimes the conversation is not going to be perfect. It's not going to be sweet. It's not going to be nice. It's not going to be kumbaya. Save that for when it's time to get on the dance floor at the family reunion. Right now, stop worrying about family reunions and focus on family union. That's all I got. Take that one with you.
Okay, Jamila, come on.
Well said, sir. Well said.
Well, amen to everything everybody has said. Amen. Now, when I was a young person, there was this show called Star Trek: The Next Generation. And there was this group of aliens called the cyborgs, I believe they were called. And they were all about assimilation. Now, the point of the assimilation is that they wanted everybody to be just like them. The problem is within our villages, we want everybody, well, how come you can't just do it like we've always done it? How come you're not doing it, like us? And, if you just get on them food stamps, you ain't got to worry about nothing else. And, and then not only that, and then you have the dysfunction of, you can't tell me how to raise my child. The village is as dysfunctional as the individual families. And until the village gets together and says, oh, we all have these different dysfunctions. Let's, I've gone through this. Let me help you with this. You've gone through that. Help me with that. And I recognize that me and Ken will probably never see eye to eye on this. But, when I look back and think things over generationally, and maybe it's just my experience, but generationally, they told me, don't do that. But when you are young and independent and trying to find your individuality, you don't listen. You don't. And it doesn't mean that it's grandmama saying it. It can be, the man at the corner store who sees you going down the wrong path. It can be, it very well could be a cousin, or it very well could be somebody at work or at a teacher at school who is saying that. Those are still part of your village, because these are the people that you see and or talk to from day to day. So yeah, it doesn't mean that it has to be grandmama or it has to be auntie. Somebody said, hey, don't go down this path. Now, whether or not I chose to go down that path is on me. That's me being an individual. But it wasn't that it wasn't told. So now, as you are dealing with the collective village, it is important to recognize, and this is what demonized the cyborgs, that they wanted everybody to come in and be assimilated and do just like them. That is the wrong path to go through. I have personally been blessed to be in a family where we do talk about, okay, cousin so and so does this and cousin so and so does that, so that within your family who you can turn to for different advice and questions. I think it's important, beyond ribs and the Cupid shuffle, to be able to do that, to be able to go to those family members, aunties, uncles, cousins, things like that, and be able to not just ask about, not just let's not just ask about recipes and who's going to make the potato salad, but let's also be able to go to a cousin and ask about our taxes, ask about how to invest in certain things, ask about their career because I'm interested in being a lawyer. I know that cousin so and so is a lawyer. What are the steps that I need to take? But those older generations have to be willing to say, okay, I'm going to set some time and allot some time so that we can talk about what you need to do. And the other thing is, Romel was talking about, you cannot shame a person. If a person decides that they want to go to cosmetology school instead of going to college, it is the classic, W.E.B. Du Bois and I hate when I forget these things, but there was the trades versus college. I definitely don't knock college. Yes, you can go to college, but guess what? There are people who are in college, who went to college, who are on food stamps, because they can't find a job. Where you have people who went to trade school who are making six figures. So we can't knock that. And as families, we are the worst at that because we are looking for the savior to go to college, get your bachelor's degree, get your master's degree, get your doctorate. And those people can't find work. But if you send that one, I have a nephew who does HVAC. He makes more money than most people I know with a PhD right now because they can't find a job. We cannot shame people for their individuality. Our job as a village is to guide. That is our job as a village, is to guide. Not say, you can't do this, you can't do that, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, or whatever. Guide. If you see somebody, well, I wouldn't do that if I were you. Okay, but you're not me. Okay. Now, my question was, do you know somebody within our family who does that? Who is involved in that? Or do you know a person who can help guide me? This is a functional village. That's what we have to strive for, as opposed to, we are all dysfunctional individuals, which creates dysfunctional families, which creates dysfunctional village. It is not that we don't have village, it's that everything that we are dealing with is broken. And having dialogues like this is where you begin to heal and not just put a band-aid on it. We don't want to just put a band-aid on it because at some point the hemorrhage is still going to bleed out. We have to actually, take the time to disinfect and stitch up and go through the healing process. And the healing process is not easy. The healing process itches and it hurts and all of that. But we have to go through that process to create a functional village. And I think at this stage and age in the 21st century, because like I was saying, we have words. children have words, adults have words. We have to sit down and use our words. I applaud Ken for being able to get his family together and saying, hey, we're broken. We are completely broken. And how do we fix this? Because, but here's the key. Everybody has to be able to listen to. If you're not listening, if you're just on there and yeah, we sure are, and you turn around and do the same crap that you were doing before, it's useless. It was a useless conversation. So I was taught God gave us one mouth to speak, but two ears to listen. It is important that we listen, not just for the sake of response, but for the sake of changing things and doing things in a new and different way. Some traditions are beautiful traditions. I applaud, everybody who has those beautiful family traditions. But, when you are talking about curses and you recognize, okay, we're not communicating the way we need to, we're not helping each other the way we need to, things like that. Okay, we have to sit down and figure this thing out, whether it is in your immediate household or you do, in the family reunion Zoom or whatever it is, being able to sit down and communicate those things, because we're out here struggling. And even in my 40s, I'm still looking at the generation above me saying, okay, well, what are y'all doing now in this 21st century scenario, that's different. And, I spoke on this before. I had to really look at my great grandmother's generation when you were talking about how to do certain things. As a single mother, for me, I had to look at my great grandmother, because my grandmother and my mother were not single mothers. They didn't know how to do it. Okay, so now I have to go back generations, and you have to do that, but you have to also know your family history. Like Ken was saying, you have to understand what your family history is, to be able to go back and look back and find out, okay, now I can talk to my grandmother about what my great grandmother went through, because she doesn't understand. She understands it from a child's perspective because she was the child of a single mother. But I can ask her, okay, well, what did your mother do about this? And what did your mother do about that? So that I knew better how to function as a single parent. As a unit, my youngest daughter lives with my ex-husband because I needed to concentrate and focus on my health. It is a functional unit. We talk about, we were talking about the single parenthood. As a unit, this works for us. I still see my daughter. I still talk to my daughter. It wasn't, it's not that I'm a ain't shit mama or anything like that. It was, oh, she needs to focus on her health. Let me step up to the plate and be the father that I desire to be to my children. And so for the last 2 years of their high school careers, my oldest is our oldest together is already grown and out the house. But you know what I'm saying? It was one of those things where we had to come together as a village and make some things make sense. And so he took on that responsibility. But that is coming together as a village, because I struggled with it. And I had to go and talk to other people. When I talked to my grandmother, I found out that for a time, my grandmother went to go live with her aunt. And there is no shame in asking for help. And there is no shame in saying, to the cousin that you see who has gone through that thing, I need to know how you did it because I'm struggling. And, unfortunately, I think that we look towards our elders to just come to us and say, hey, don't do that. Sometimes you have to go to them and ask. this is something that I heard respectfully. I'm trying to understand because I'm going through it and I need to know how you got through it. Now, just because they got through it doesn't mean you're going to get through it the same way. Understand that. But again, that's a part of the village. Go to your elders, ask your elders how they made it through that thing. And then you have perspective and say, okay, they went through that. How can I get through this in this day and age? So for me, I look at it in terms of it is, we have a dysfunctional assimilation right now. And so definitely we have to work towards um, the individuality of our assimilation and how to make it healthy and functional.
Okay. Okay. So, um, for my for closing out this question, I think my piece in this is the roles of the village. And I asked the question, what happened to the village? What it is that we don't want to use all the resources in the village. You know, we've had all these different perspectives and options, but the village is still around, but we don't want to utilize because of our pride and because of life happenings. The village has a therapist that you can go and see and start talking about what's going on, whether it's your pastor at the church, whether it's a therapist in a private office, or whether it's that one person in your life that you know and you can pour your spirit out to. In the village, there's a therapist. And like Ken say, in the village, there's the one that handles post-traumatic. Because there's always going to be the one who will say, oh, girl, you shouldn't have, and you did. And there's always going to be that person. But their role is there because we've allowed them to be there in the space for a long time. Teachers are in the village, but their voice is lost because parents won't back them up. You see, you couldn't call my house. My teacher couldn't call my house and say I had done anything without there being some kind of repercussion or consequence. In my household, the village is still very much alive. A teacher can't call my house and say my kid did something without there being a repercussion or consequence, because it may be that, oh, they did that in your classroom? Oh, okay. And then I go take electronics, because internet privilege is going to be some repercussion, because a part of my village, in order for them to be able to effectively teach them, I have to effectively raise them at the house. But to Jamila's sometimes thing is we have to listen to what they're saying. Not all children are over dramatic, and not all children are just saying things based on what they think they know. Stop, pay attention, and listen. We have kids killing themselves because something's going on at the house and nobody's listening to them. You have kids killing themselves, and part of it is they don't understand that, think they fault, but won't nobody talk to them. They put them out the room. Don't tell nobody, it's family business. And then they put them out the room and no one ever explains to them. I go by straight thing. I tell my kids certain stuff. When I tell you this no, I'm gonna tell you why the no the first time. After that, it's just a flat no. But this first time, I'm saying no because I see something that you don't see, and I've been down this road, and I want to protect you from going down this road. Don't act that way when you get into this situation and I'm not around you. My words want to echo in your mind to say, Mama said no because she done did this. I got in trouble. My mama creeped me. She caught me good wet in the tub. Yeah, she got me. I remember that from the time I was about 8 years old. Baby, that was the last time she had to worry about me. Why? Because she said, I did this because I love you. I did this because this is a direct consequence of a direct action. And she let me know from that point. My mother, who effectively is my grandmother, who raised me, we didn't always see eye to eye. She taught me how to be a strong woman. The generational thing in my family is the multiple relationships and multiple marriages. My mom taught me how to be a strong woman. She taught me how to take care of my house. But the one thing she did teach me that I think is failing in a lot of situations, she taught me to ask for help. You going to get this car, take somebody with you who know about cars. You going to look at this house, take somebody with you who know about houses. You going to the doctor, talk to somebody. Talk to, you got all these nurses in your family, you got all these medical, talk to somebody when they tell you whatever they're going to tell you and they give you these medicines. Talk to somebody. You want to get a repair done, talk to somebody. She instilled that in me from day one. So that way, no matter how much clowning me and her do, to this day, if I call her certain things, Mom, and this is what happened, and we may not see eye to eye, we may have different opinions on the outcome, but it won't be because I ain't asked somebody and did my research. I had to have my due diligence when I come to the table. And that seems to be lacking in a lot of situations here in the village these days. I have issues that I had going on. I have abandonment. I have a biological parent who's an addict. And it bothered me because when she was in the beginning stages of it, I was a kid and I didn't understand why mommy was leaving. But one thing my grandmother said, we might have clashed. She told me it wasn't my fault, but she also made sure she took me to somebody's therapist. And when I got older, what did I do? Go to somebody's therapist so that I wouldn't be dead. And that's where the village became for me. My village, like, and to Ken's point, my village are consisted of my sorority sisters and women that are close to me like my sisters. Why? They're the ones that I call in the middle of the night when my heart is broken and I don't know what to do. When I'm sitting on the floor crying because everything's going haywire. They're the ones I'm going to call, not the people who got the same blood as me because I'm not close to them. I mean, it's real. They know my deep, dark secrets, and they know when I make a certain words or a certain facial expression, they're like, okay, wait a minute, don't do this and don't do that. Hold on, I'm on the way. But they're also the ones that if I go off the grid for more than 3 days, they're the ones who come knocking on my door talking about, hey, or they messaging one of my kids and say, hey, where your mom at? Put her on the phone. That's my village. So when I say I'm a believer in the village mentality, I am, but it's not the traditional village. It is the one that has come because we've all have our own situations and have learned how to help each other and learn when to say, hey, girl, go get help. One of my friends is a nurse. I be at the doctor's office calling her on the doctor, and be talking to the doctor. You say, what now? And have her on the phone while reading paperwork. They told me, we sit in the car, just left the doctor's office. And I'm in the car reading the paperwork to her. And she explained to me everything they just told me in a way that I can understand. Because I told her, I don't know what they just said. They gave you all these big words. Break this down to me. What am I doing? I'm attempting to instill that in my kids so they understand that not everybody is out for your detriment. And you don't have to keep up with the Joneses. I don't care what y'all have. I don't have to have the latest Nikes and Air Jordans. I ain't paying that much money. But I need friends that I can call on when my light's finna get cut out and know they got my back. Even if they can't help me pay it, they can say, come go to my house and I got a place for you to stay until you get back on your feet. If I can't call you and say so, and even if you can't do nothing else but listen to me and let me scream, vent, and cry, you've done something. Because after I get all that done, come on, let's figure out a plan for me to get straight. So when I say, so the village is lost in a lot of situations, and you almost mourn that it's being lost because everyone has a specialty they can help increase, but everybody's trying to so busy doing what's it? Everybody's so broken within themselves they don't see how to help each other and don't understand that holding on to each other. Because where my finance perspective is broken, your medical stuff may be broken, but I can help you with your medical stuff and you can help me with my finance stuff and we can figure this thing on out. Let's go. There becomes a time where we have to understand that individualization is good only in certain situations. We are stronger than that. That's my little piece.
And I gotta jump in now. I got a question.
What you say, Ken? I can't hear you, Ken.
Hold on. Wait, hold on a second. Wait.
There you go. There you go, kid. I can hear.
All right, let's try this.
Can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
All right. Okay. So here's my question for you, because I think you just introduced a dynamic that needs to be addressed. So my question for you is, are we in again, we're talking modern times right now. Are we in an era where where you just can't count on the family village? Are we in a place now where, you know how back in the day you used to be able to go to Build-A-Bear and you could build your bear the exact way you wanted it? Are we in an era now, as things continue to change, where now it's not Build-A-Bear, it's Build-A-Village, where you literally have to select the people around you, and from there you have to build your village? Because I'll tell you, to me, I understand having friends, I understand having fraternity members and, you know, sorority members around you that have your back at all times, but it almost seems to me like we literally live in an age where Build-A-Village is a thing now. You literally have to say, if I need help with legal issues, let me go grab a lawyer. If I need help with finances, let me go grab an accountant. If I'm going through the worst situations, let me go grab a frat bro and put it all together. And now that becomes the new village. And I'm wondering, are we in that era now? And should we count on the bloodline a little bit less, because now we've been equipped with the people around us to help us build the life that we desire long term? That's kind of where I'm going.
Yeah, I would absolutely say yeah.
We live in a different age of needs than what my grandmother or my great grandmother, the needs that they had. You know, especially as women, you know, the needs that I have in today's era, you know, my mom can't necessarily help me with. You know, she's close to retirement. I'm like just kind of getting in the swing of my career. You know, so, you know, I have village members who are younger than me, but that's because, you know, because they have grown up in this current technology, you know, short attention span, instant gratification world. You know, they are in my village to support me. And I remember, you know, earlier listening to people talk about their elders. You know, sometimes our elders don't know what advice to give us because the situation is something completely foreign to them. You know, my grandmother had a farm. My mom was raised on that farm. So to ask her about, to ask my grandmother about grocery options and eating healthy, that is a lost concept to her, you know. So I think that based on the needs of our current society, the village has to change, and it has to change in order to get back to the original topic, in order to break the generational curses. Because the more fresh blood you bring in, the more you're exposed. You know, I tell people all the time, if you get the chance to travel outside of this country, don't just go to a tourist location. Go where the people are. Because when you see how people live in other lands, other locations, other nationalities, even in your own country, when you see how people live on the West Coast versus how they live here, the possibilities begin to open up for you. The concept of diversity, humility, compassion, empathy, all of those things start to open up for you when you realize that the world just isn't your mom, dad, sister, brother, and auntie. So we have to open our villages up. But the caveat to that is we can't leave our family members out of our village.
Mm-hmm.
While we're creating that village, right? Our current family, you know, if we're going to break these cycles, they need to be in that village too. Because the way that I broke mine was because a friend of mine went to hug me and I flinched. Because I thought, you know, in my family, an adult is coming towards you. That's not a hug. That was, you were about to get smacked, you know? And she was like, "You don't hug in your family?" And I was like, "You do?" it made me realize, and she became a very important part of my village, because it made me realize we don't say I love you, or we didn't say I love you in my family. We didn't hug. We didn't do all those things that these white families were doing. And I'm like, oh crap. No one, not my aunties, cousins, grandparents, I've never heard them say I love you. So, because I have this extra person in my village, but I made sure that I was bringing those lessons back to my family and continuing to keep them in my village. Now we can break those generational cycles of abuse, which is the particular curse in our family. So we can see that there's another way. And so, yes, the village has to expand beyond your immediate family, but you can't, and your family members, but you can't leave them out of the village either.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. It's like if you're building a house, if all you have is bricks, but you don't have nails, or you don't have screwdrivers or hammers, if you don't have concrete, or if you don't have shingles, you can build a structure. It may not necessarily be the most effective structure, but you can build it. You can build with it. However, if you realize that there are additional tools and material that you need in order to make your building, to make your house the best that it can be, then it would be an act of lunacy to not acquire the necessary materials to build your house to the best of your ability. So our families, our bloodline families, are a part of the building materials that we need to build our village. It doesn't mean that they are the totality of everything that we'll need in order to build a successful house. But it would also be wise for you, you would be foolish to think that, man, all I've got is bricks, I need all these other materials, and then you forget about the bricks, because you need the bricks too. Okay, so every piece has a place in the edifice, and your job is to make sure that you are putting the proper pieces in the places where you need them, where they will be most effective in order to benefit you and to achieve the highest level of utility from what it is that you're building. Corporations do it all the time. They staff their weaknesses. They may be great at sales, but they may have horrible customer retention. So they need to do something with their customer service in order to keep the clients that they were able to initially acquire, so that their corporation can grow. Otherwise, it's just a revolving door, and the revenue that they generate just goes right back out, because now they're not able to keep their customers. The same thing with us. We need to assess our needs and then assess our resources, properly utilize those resources and put them in the most effective places, and then also acquire the additional resources that we need in order to build something that's most effective. That's how we build a village. And it is necessary to do that. Otherwise, we delude ourselves into thinking that we've built something worthwhile, all the while we've got leaks in the roof. We've got shelter, but we're still getting wet when it rains, so.
Yeah. And yeah, Ken, building a village is really a real thing. Like, and to Wendell's point, it's not that we're leaving them out. However, what their goals versus my goals are different. So I may help them in some ways, but they may have a whole slew of people that can help them in different ways. We're in 2 different states. If they need me, I'll go, but I'm not their close village person. I'm in the next village over. I'm the second round. I'm calling it back up, but I'm not sure who said it earlier, is it used to be a day you pick up the phone, you pick up one phone and you had 20 cousins ready to come and have your bag. I'm one of them cousins that you say, hey, I'm going through this is what is necessary. Hold on, let me get there. I got you. Now we gonna make sure I got your back. You my family. I still love you. But in my everyday life, we're not that close. We're just not. Doesn't mean nothing's wrong with them. It just means that where my life is and the way my journey is, they don't play a big role in my journey.
Hey, real quick, if you don't mind, I'd like to say something real fast. Hey, so since we're talking about, building a village, I have a message for the internet village out there. And the internet village means everyone that's watching this live stream right now. So to each of you, we, all 5 of us, we have a need right now. So what I need you to do, I need you to hit that like button. Look, I only see like 1 like right now. I need you, listen to me. Hey, you, I need you, hit the like button. I know y'all like this. Y'all hit that like button, please hit that. Look, hey, listen, I'm still staring at it right now. I still see, all I see is this. That's the face I see right now. That's the only one. Hit the like button. It is what, see, thank you. See, look at that. Look at all the little blue hands popping out of the sky. I love it. Hit the, I see hearts now. Okay. Yeah, y'all keep that going. Keep that going. Yeah. Okay. All right. And one last thing, because if I don't shake it up, it's gonna get real dark real fast. I'm sorry, y'all, but I'm about to show my youth here. As soon as Windows started talking about getting the building materials, I swear to you, I immediately thought of Bricks by Gucci Mane. I'm sorry, but it just I'm sorry. Okay, I'm done, y'all. I'm done. I promise. I'm done. I yield.
Every once in a while, he just has to go all the way to the left. Okay, so in continuing on to this conversation, and the message from the audience is how can we include the family members when they are broken? That's the reason we have to include them. The generational curses come because we take the broken people and put them to the side. Say Polar Precious is okay. We put Polar Precious over in the corner, but ain't nobody addressed her needs. So now we are Precious sitting over the corner. She broken. She bring a broken child into the world who brings more broken children in. And we have a whole line of broken because we put Precious to the corner and nobody took her to nobody's therapist. Ain't nobody took her to find out what's going on. Ain't nobody said, okay, why are you broken? What part of you is broken? Is it your heart? Is it your mind? What's broken? What can we do to fix it? How can we get you to a new level so that we can get you healthy so whatever comes from you can be healthy? I mean, and that's my thought on that statement. So guys, what is it? What do we do with the broken in the village? How do we change it? Go ahead, Mel.
There's a difference between, and so I did respond to this, but we're talking about potentially 2 different issues. There's a difference between someone who's broken, and I don't like that term, but someone who, needs assistance or needs their village to surround them and wants that village, versus a person who is currently in your village. And it's always family to me, because a lot of people are like, oh, that's family, I can't do anything about them. They do not have to be in your village. Let me repeat that. People who do not want to be, I'm channeling Mr. Ken. People who do not want to be in your village do not have to be in your village, right? So if what you're defining as broken is someone who's abusive to you in your village, and a lot of time we're speaking about our family members, you don't have to include them in your village. They clearly don't want to be there. Right? Because if they did, they would not abuse you. They have you in their village as a punching bag, but they don't need to be in your village. So, I advise people all the time, listen, I have family members that are not in my village. because they're not willing to do the work that we've been talking about. They're not willing to contribute. They're not willing to learn and go, take these nails, like Mr. Wendell said, these nails and these shingles and put them on their roof too, right? So you help being broken or needing healing. I don't like the word broken, right? But needing healing and restoration, empathy, compassion, all of that, you just give that to them. You do exactly all the things we've been talking about. You provide them with the resources, reminding you again that statistics say that abused people have to leave a minimum of 7 times before it sticks. So you just keep pointing out the curse to them, pointing out the situation that they're in and supporting them through it, right? But if they don't act like someone in your village who's about edifying the village as well as the individual, they don't get to be in your village. That's it. Bye.
Yep, I would just add to that. I just put it in the comments that to be broken is not to be without value. If you are building someone who's building a house with using cinder blocks, not all cinder blocks, even though they may be uniform, they may not all be built to a certain standard, or built the exact same way. And so if you try to build your house and you get off level, you may have to actually split one of those blocks in order to make it fit the way that it needs to fit. And that's perfectly fine, because there's still some utility, there's still some usefulness that could be gained from it. So, just know that it's okay. Perfection is not a prerequisite to purpose. You just want to be mindful of the fact that we have our areas of development. Whether or not you choose to work on yourself is going to help you to determine how much usefulness you can be to the other people in your village. And if you identify that someone is not willing or able to be of value to you, it doesn't mean that they're not worthless. So, let everything serve. There's a purpose that everything and everyone can serve.
So I would say this. Sometimes you have to build sub villages. The majority of people within my village don't understand what it is to have MS. So I had to go and find a sub village for those times. And I understand what you say, Mel, when you say you don't like the word broken, but in some days I feel broken. I do. I feel absolutely broken. I can't necessarily go to my mother or to my sorority sisters and say, hey, I feel broken, because, all I'm going to get is, I'm sorry to hear that, and not necessarily what can I do to help. On the other hand, my sub village that has MS, I get that. Try this, do this, talk to your doctor about this. So I had to create those sub villages specific to the need. And sometimes within your village, you have to create those sub villages. And it is perfectly fine to create those to get what you need. The beautiful thing about the internet is we have groups and chats for everything now. If you are having problems and you're not getting the answers you need from your immediate family or your immediate village or whatever, go create you a sub village. I'm a single mother and this is my dynamic. If you are a single parent with a child with autism, I promise you, there is a sub village for you. If you are a single father who, I'm not really sure how to do that, I promise you, there is a sub village for that. You know what I'm saying? So, and those sub villages become your greater collective. a village, where, no, you're not going to talk to all 1005 people in that particular community, but somewhere in there, you're going to connect with somebody who becomes part of your greater personal village. It's important to be able, as Wendell was saying, to take those bricks and know exactly where to place them. And if you have to cut it so it fits just right in that corner, to be able to do that. So, don't feel because your village doesn't understand the place that you're in that nobody cares. You can find people who care. You can find those particular dynamics. The internet is one of the greatest things that has been able to connect people, to create those sub villages, because before the internet we couldn't do that. um, I have people, in different cities that I met through, Lord have mercy, I'm about to age myself, Black Planet. But they are some of my best friends to this day, and that was 20 years ago. That was 20 years ago, but I have those connections now that, I will never lose those people, and they have definitely become a part of my village, some of which I've never met face to face, but we talk on Facebook now. The transition has happened in terms of how we talk on social media. But build your village from your sub villages, and that will help you heal those spaces that you may feel are broken, because you have to find somebody who can relate, who can connect, with you. And it's not bad to have to go outside of your village. It's not shameful to have to go outside of your village. Sometimes your village doesn't understand why you have to go and seek therapy, because, frankly speaking, in the Black community, we don't do that. We don't do that. That's some white people stuff. We don't. Black people, we just deal with it. We just, you're gonna be okay. Pray about it, and I'm gonna pray with you, and I'm gonna touch and agree that we gonna make it through. No, I need to speak to somebody professionally who can
Right.
help me address the situations. Now, I am a firm believer that everything that we need is within us. The beautiful thing about therapy and about coaching is they ask all the right questions to pull out those things that you're dealing with, so you can address them. And I think that's so important, because people way too often think that therapy is, okay, I'm crazy and now I got to go see a doctor. No, 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 no. Now you are in a space where you are willing to break a curse. Aha. You are in a place where you are willing to address whatever that generational curse is, because this person did it and that person did it. Wait a minute, I'm doing the same thing and I feel broken. Now, you're not broken. We have to reprogram some things. It is, and I would say, if anybody on here is feeling that way and you are looking for somebody and you're trying to find somebody, reach out to somebody on here. I promise you, we can find somebody to help you. I promise you, we can. And that is what a village is supposed to look like.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Ken, come on.
I do not have the same mentality that everyone else has. Not perfectly. So I'm gonna tell you how I see it. So um, I was born into a small family in Atmore, Mobile, Alabama, and in my household, I went through a lot from a young age. So it may be difficult to see on the screen, but you'll see right here that I have burn marks to go across my hand, and it was because my mother's boyfriend took my hand, and he set my hand ablaze. And this was as an 18-month old child. And eventually, I ended up being moved from my mother's care, and I ended up in Wilson, North Carolina. 252. What's up? But after making that move, I moved in with my grandmother and my grandfather, who many in the family did not like because, keeping it honest, she basically took my granddad from another woman who happened to be in very good with the family at the time. So as I grew up, I was constantly looked at as the black sheep of the family because I was the child who received all the benefits of the grandfather, but had none of the lineage that went along with the birthright per se. And as I progressed through life, I went through a lot of different challenges. And when I needed help, there was no one to turn to normally. The situations where I needed assistance, I got it external to the home from different people at schools, from different leadership events that I was attending. And that's how I eventually got to where I am today. And I'm very happy. I'm very appreciative to be here at this point. But here's what I'm going to tell you as someone who was hurt in one village, ostracized in another, and is now standing here today. This is just my personal opinion. It is what it is. Unify or exile. That is how I live. Unify or exile. And what I mean by that is you are either with me or you are not with me at all. There is no middle ground with me. None at all. You cannot be hot or cold. Well, excuse me, you have to either be hot or you have to be cold. I don't even accept lukewarm, period, capital T, exclamation point. And even the exclamation point has a period on that too. So when I look at the way that people move within families, I'm extremely, extremely observant because people literally have the same blood as you, but would not give the blood in order to save your life sometimes. And it's a harsh reality. I'm telling you from experience that these things happen. Now, granted, you can consider me somewhat as an isolated incident because of some of the situations I've been through. Not everybody goes through it. And my situation eventually shaped my perspective on how things work. But it doesn't mean that you have to see things the same way. But what I will tell you is from my perspective, when dealing with individuals, if they elect to see you in pain, to see your struggles, to not put you in a position to feel welcome so that you can even attempt to assimilate to the family, to learn the values, to learn the history, and they don't want to let you in, that's fine. When you build yours, two choices. You either unify with me or you get sent into exile. There is no other option. And I'm not providing you with another option. Get with it or get lost. Either stay or you go. Either chill or go set yourself ablaze. Those are the only two options you have. That's it. Now, with that being said, let's talk about the perspective on dealing with people who have challenges in their lives. And I want to say this. Don't let what happened to you where you did not receive help impact your ability to help someone else who is also in need. Now, I'm not at a place in my life where I'm not going to help someone who's going through a challenge. At that point now, you're being ruthless for, in my opinion, for no reason. But I do believe that when it comes to people, if they need help and they seek help, continue to provide it. However, never allow someone's problem to eventually consume you as a person. And I've been through this where I've seen people, I've had family members who have had crazy challenges, and not calling them crazy, just an adjective for the word challenge itself. Some of these things were absolutely insane that I've seen. And I was there. And when I tried to advise, they decided to go their own path. And then they'll come back again with the same situation. And it comes back again and again and again. And when that continues to happen, it can start to frustrate. It can start to damage the relationship only if you elect to let it do so. But more so, eventually, it can affect you as an individual. So don't get so deep into your frustrations because someone's not necessarily listening all the time. Just manage the amount of energy that you put into assisting, because there's going to come a point you're going to realize that it's not necessarily that this person doesn't want to change, but it could be that a person is so indoctrinated into the situation that they have subconsciously elected not to change. You just didn't get the notice. So I give that to you from my perspective. At the end of the day, everyone's going to think differently. But from my standpoint, when it comes to people who deal with me coming in, unify or exile. Those are the only two options you got.
Okay. Wow. What a time we've had tonight with generational curses. There is a lot in this whole realm. There's some stuff we haven't even touched. But this show tonight has been really eye-opening and really thoughtful. I thank all of my panel members who have come in and been a part of this lovely journey. The next, in honors, we're still in the crust of Women's History Month. The next 2 Sundays, we will be talking about womanhood. So have your questions ready. We're going to break down some of the barriers. Let's talk about this pride, this village, this toxic, this beautiful, this wonderful, and this hurt. We need to have some conversation. So the next couple of weekends, that's what we're going to do. So I do thank you for all. I hope to see or hear from you today, or tonight rather, at any point in time this week. Feel free to message me if you have any questions or thoughts. Make sure you go and like and share the YouTube channel. Don't forget that, as Ken says, make sure you hit that like button.
That's right. Hey, look. Hey, listen.
Let's
We're
get
gonna
the
run
likes
this back.
up.
Hey, look. Don't make me go Kevin Samuels on y'all.
Kevin Samuels, get my likes up.
Get the likes up. Let's go. Matter of fact, I tell you what, and as you're walking out the door, hit that share button too. Yeah, hold that. That.
There we go.
Make sure you pass.
There we go. Otherwise, we're gonna go to intermission.
Look at this. And we wanted to share what we're talking about, because the best way to effect change is to start communicating with each other. So make sure you share it. Make sure you have conversations. I love to hear from you. Oh my goodness, this has been a night. I thank you
Like,
for
comment, subscribe.
all
All of that.
everyone. Yay!
Get the likes up. I don't care. Get the likes up.
Okay, live.